Welcome and thanks for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. During the Q&A session, if you'd like to ask a question, you may press star 1 on your phone. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. And now I'd like to turn the call over to Mr. Christopher Stever. Sir, you may begin.
Hi, thanks, Ted. As introduced, I am Christopher Stever, Associate Program Manager here at the Cdfi Fund in the Certification Compliance Monitoring and Evaluation Unit. I'm also joined by Associate Program Manager Michelle Dickens. I'll be going through the slides today, and then we'll be conducting some Q&A. Let's get over to our slides. Don't seem to be. There we go. Our objective today is fairly one. We're going to review completing and submitting the annual Cdfi certification and data collection report in AMIS. Also, we often refer to it in shorthand as the ACR, annual certification report. We use those pretty interchangeably. The long name is really most accurate. This is a report that we use to make sure that certified CDFIs are maintaining adherence to the certification criteria, maintaining their CDFI certifications. We ask for information in this report as well that is used for other purposes, for some research purposes, to feed other application processes that we have should certified CDFIs be applying to funding programs. So just to make sure we're clear about some of our terms, I wanted to point that out. Today, that's going to take us through this agenda. We'll talk a little about some general information. We'll review some key documents. We'll go over some general navigation tips for utilizing the ACR in the AMIS system. And then we're going to really go through step by step through the report. Each section by section. So I've got them listed out here. There's an initial section. It's got a bunch of questions, and then sections specifically for development services, for financial data, financial products, the attachments, how to submit, and then wrap up with a Q&A session where you can ask questions on anything in the that we've covered or didn't cover. We'll make sure that you're helping drive we provide you today, because it's often to anticipate what people will have questions about. I realize too, a lot of you have probably already been through this once, but there are still a number of CDFIs that will be going through this process and submitting the ACR for a first time. Just first touch on the annual report, sort of what it represents, and how it's different from how we used to sort of manage the CDFI certification on an ongoing basis. Many of you may not even be aware of how we used to do it, but just in case there's any confusion about how the certification is being managed today versus in the past, how we speak about it. I just wanted to go over that again. There was a time when we had a thing called recertification, which was related to the fact that in the past, the CDFI certification had a 3-year term. the certification expired after 3 years, and in order to continue to be certified, Cdfis had to essentially apply all over again, complete entire application, new application to be recertified. And so we use that term specifically to refer to, this, submitting a new application. Last year, we implemented a new approach. We got rid of the term, the 3-year term, and the expiration date, and we moved to this process of you get initially certified through submitting a full application, and if you meet the requirements, you can be certified. And then on an ongoing basis after that, you submit an annual report, the annual report that we're going to be discussing today, to give us some information about how you're continuing to meet the certification requirements. The whole idea was that we kind of just came to the realization that a full application every 3 years was overkill. It was more information, or the type of information wasn't particularly helpful, and really what we needed to do was focus on the information that tends to change more frequently, and then more frequently gather that information. So instead of every 3 years, we do it every 1 year, we gather this annual report. So it's more information, more frequently. We're hoping that the net is a net reduction in burden to Cdfis to maintain the certification, and I think as people continue to get used to the annual report and do it year after year, I think it truly will achieve that result if it hasn't already. I think that as a part of that old process is that every time you got recertified every 3 years, you would get a new letter that says, hey, you've been certified, and this is your evidence of being certified. So we're not doing that anymore. We gave everybody, before the first annual reports last year, we gave everybody a new replacement letter. Those were certified at the time, and that the significant thing of that new letter was that it didn't have the expiration date. We eliminated that. So now everyone had a letter that says you're certified, it has no expiration, and the letter speaks to the requirement that you complete this annual report each year. So when you complete the annual report, what you're going to get is, when you complete the annual report, you submit it, and when we're finished with the process, you're going to get an email from us that indicates that the process has been completed, and what the result was, that we have affirmed the certification, you're good to go. No, you couldn't affirm the certification, you're not good to go, or that there are issues that still need to be resolved, and we're going to have to continue to work on that. We can talk about that more later, but all I say right now is that the new process is a new letter, which kind of emphasizes the fact that you're not getting a new certification, you're maintaining an existing certification. Report and when certified Cdfis are required to report, because this is the new approach we're taking, and it's all the Cdfis that were certified before the beginning of this current year, this current calendar year, what we would call the report year. So for those that were certified before January 1st, 2017, those are the groups that need to submit the ACR for report year 2017, which means that's what we're collecting in 2017. We'll talk more about what dates impact what data you're going to submit. But this is just to to let you know. If you've got the emails, if you've been emails from us saying, you know, the ACR is available, it's due November 15th, unless we've made an error, you know, only the groups that are required to be certified, those certified before this date, getting those emails and are required to submit. So if you were certified more recently in this current year, you know, we've looked at you very recently, so we're confident that you're, you know, continuing to meet the requirements, and so you don't have to submit the report. So hopefully there's no one on this call doesn't need to report. You're welcome to stay on and get a jump start on next year, but it's just to clarify who needs to report and when. What I wanted to touch on is the fact that you know, this is an annual report, and so that means, kind of obviously, one report per year. So you'll see in the system, in the certification page, Cdfi certification page, that we actually list what the report year is. And so when you go to create a new report, it pulls that date, that year into the report, tags it with this is, you know, for this report, this is the 2017 report. That also prevents you from creating additional reports for 2017 because the system should only allow you to create one report per report year. We did notice that there were a few groups that were very eager, and we appreciate people being on the ball, you know, and eager to satisfy the requirement. But they were somehow able to submit reports for 2017, create and submit reports for 2017 before we were ready for them to create the reports, because we were still tweaking the report form for this year. And for that, it's less than a handful, I think. We're going to need to actually return that report to those groups and have them sort of look back over, make sure that everything is right, and if there was anything that we added that they need to submit to, you know, update the report accordingly and resubmit it. So not a huge deal. You don't have to, you know, it's not we're going to require you to just start over, but we'll need those groups to take the report back, look at it, and update it accordingly and resubmit it. So I sort of touched on this a little bit. I mean, the overall process is at a high level very simple. You create a report, you complete it, and submit it to us. Then we review it, and either we're going to confirm that you're still meeting the requirements, you're not meeting the requirements, and you know, for in the odd cases that, you know, you're not meeting the requirements and simply cannot meet the requirements, we may have to terminate the certification. That being said, we're not going to just be you know, out of the blue, you know, terminating your certification because, you know, we have a process for reaching back out to you to make sure that everyone's on the same page, that we haven't left any stones unturned, and that it's very clear on both sides with Cdfi and the Cdfi fund how and why a group is not meeting the requirements and has to have the certification terminated. You know, so, you know, in the sub-bullet under, you know, reviewing the report, a report may be returned for revision and resubmission. That could happen in at a couple of points. We actually have a couple of levels of review while we're reviewing the report, and you know, if that first, you know, during that first level of review, if we find that there's somehow information that's missing or that we need clarification for something, there's an error in the report, we can immediately, at an early stage, return that report to CDFI and have them make whatever corrections are needed and resubmit it, and then it can continue in the review process. The other time that we may return it is if, in the case where we believe that the CDFI is not meeting all of the requirements, at the time that we're doing the review, but we believe that they can make the appropriate corrections within a reasonable period of time, we may put that group into a cure period, give them a cure period, a certain amount of time to make corrections. And in that case, we would return the report to the CDFI, just basically reopening it for them to make updates. But we would then provide information about what the issues were. We would probably set up a time to chat with the CDFI and discuss what those issues were and how the CDFI would likely need to make corrections to get right with the criteria. And once the CDFI has addressed the issues, made whatever changes need to be made, they would then resubmit the ACR, and we would finish the process. It could, in theory, it could still, after the cure period, we still could come to the conclusion that the CDFI is still not meeting the requirements and would need to have the certification would need to be terminated. We find that that's the rare case, and again, we're not looking to do that, for there to be any surprises that we would be terminating the certification, with the group knowing what the issues were. So we can certainly talk more about that in the Q&A if you have questions about the process that we're stepping through. Continuing on, in order to complete the report, we provided various materials to help you do that. There's kind of two buckets of materials that you're going to want to access to. The first group are the AMIS training materials, which are all available right on the CDFI Fund website. And there are quite a few AMIS guidance documents. The ones that we've listed here are both just sort of getting up to speed using the AMIS system, the Awards Management Information System, that everyone needs to have. And then there are also some specific manuals, one in particular at the bottom there, Training Manual, CDFI Annual Certification Report Submission, is going to help you with the mechanics of using AMIS, of doing the report in AMIS. So all of those things are there available to you. Most of you probably have already gotten pretty familiar with AMIS. For those of you that are really newly certified, newly new to programs, and if you haven't extensively gone through the general AMIS materials that we have and aren't well versed in how to use AMIS, I would really encourage folks to again to have one or more of your staff become experts in AMIS, so that's never the issue with submitting things and giving us information in the AMIS system. And I do say more than one person because there's nothing worse than having that key person dependency and they leave unexpectedly, and suddenly you have no one that can access the AMIS system or can complete anything easily. The other main bucket of, didn't want to do that, of reporting documents have available on the certification reporting page on the website. So when you're on the Cdfi Fund website and you go into the programs area and you pull up the certification page, the Cdfi certification page, there'll be two sort of main areas. One for folks that are newly applying for certification, which has all the application materials. And then there'll be a reporting page. And on that reporting page, we have all the information, the documents that you'll need for completing the annual certification report. We've listed here, and we have a link there as well to the training manual for annual certification, just because we think it's that important that you have easy access to it. Perhaps most importantly, we have the instructions document for completing the ACR and the glossary of terms, the companion to the instructions. Anything that's not defined in the instructions should hopefully be defined in the glossary. I will say a lot of times we get questions on, what does this mean? It's something in the instructions, maybe a term, or in the glossary, I have this situation, and the glossary doesn't seem to address my situation. We really don't have a lot more guidance than what we've put into these documents at this point. And so what I generally encourage people to do is to interpret the instructions and the definitions as best you can with whatever resources you have, and to just document how you've addressed a question or a term, so that if it ever came around and we were looking at something at a later date, you could give us in great detail what you did and why you did it that way. That's not to say that you can't ask us more detailed questions. We certainly want to provide you all the guidance that we absolutely can, but just as a preface to, we may not have a better answer than what we've already provided in the instructions in the glossary, and that may be that we can do. So those are the documents that we have to through the process, and really that instructions document is going to walk you through a question in the ACR, and there shouldn't be any big surprises. Here's just a few tips that I find are helpful in approaching and understanding how the system works, and how the report is structured. I put it here again. The very first thing you should really do is review those training manuals. Make sure that you're not having technical issues that can be easily resolved through just having a better familiarity with how AMIS works. If you really are having a problem with, especially with something technical, but also programmatic, questions about the ACR questions themselves, all the any questions that you might have, I would encourage you to use the service request function in AMIS. We do have other ways to contact us for help with questions that we've long had. Our help desks, quote unquote help desks, by phone and by email, those are still available. The information for all of the avenues, channels we have for communication are listed on the website, and they also will have them listed on the last slide of this deck. But we really hope that people will continue to embrace the service request function in AMIS, because it's a much more powerful way to approach communication, because it makes it easier for us to track your requests, to share them internally, and not lose them, and really document everything we're doing in our efforts to get you the answers and the guidance that you need. So that's just my personal plea or encouragement to use the service requests. Hopefully you find them as helpful as they should be. The structure of the report, I just wanted to note at a high level, the report and AMIS in general is built on a platform provided by Salesforce. For anybody, for the nerds out there that know Salesforce, they're known as being customer relations software, but they have a very powerful foundation software underneath all their products. And so we actually built everything that we're doing in AMIS on that platform. And so you'll see, and as you start to use the ACR and anything in AMIS, you'll start to see the pattern of, you'll get screens that have, information, and then there will be links, there'll be sections that will take you down a layer to a new screen. And sometimes you'll hear, we'll not be able to help ourselves, we'll refer to it as a related list. And if we ever say related list, that just means, a subsection. You'll see a subsection sort of summarized or highlighted at one level, but then you click on a link and it takes you down to a new page that's sort of, which is the sub-level where there's more detail and where you might actually be working and inputting information. So just wanted to mention that. I'll try and point that out as we go along through the report. The other thing I want to point out is that you'll see the questions on screen there'll be a label and next to an entry screen, an entry field. And the label will be quite short, and it's really a function of just the system won't allow us to have anything longer than this short bit of text. And so some of our questions are a little bit longer and will fit in that label. We've actually put the full question in the help text that's associated with a particular question field and label. And you'll notice where the help text is because it's got a little circle with a question mark in it. So anything that is that doesn't have the little question mark, you know that the full question is in the label. But if it has the little question mark, you want to click on that to see what the full question is. Now, you'll be able to see that we've provided the label and the full question help text in the help text in the instructions. So we've kind of got you covered two places, but just so that that's clear how that bit of structure works. The only other thing I wanted to say about general navigation is that there's two sort of modes that you could be in. You could be in sort of just a viewing mode on a page where you can see the questions and any data that you've entered. But then if you want to edit, if you want to enter to respond to the question, enter data into the form, you have to switch to an edit mode. And so when you're in edit mode, you're entering all the information, and then you'll save that. It'll take you back to a non-edit mode where you can view what you've entered. One thing that's significant about that is that we had some validation in there for certain questions, things that are required, various error messages, and you won't. The system won't tell you you've made an error until you try to save the entries. So when you save the entries, it will then populate some error messages either at the top of the screen or in the body of the screen next to the field. And without getting into great detail, there are just reasons why certain error messages are next to the field versus certain are at the top. No need to know why. Just the point being, you might have to look a couple of different places for error messages. And if there are errors, it won't you save until you fix them. So just be on the lookout for that. We're going to point those out as we're going through the questions. Enough said for now on that. Let's keep moving. The report, navigating AMIS to get to the report. The first thing you're really going to see when you're in your AMIS account is this organizational detail page. And the organizational detail page has, details about your organization, all information you inputted when you were, creating your AMIS account. To get to the ACR, we need to go to the certification subsection for where the certification detail is located. So either you can scroll down this page, or you'll see that there are some links across the top there, and in this case, the fourth link over from the left. Well, I guess it's from the left or the right. You'll see certifications and one in parentheses, which means there's only one certification record for this group. We scroll down or click that link, it's going to bring us to this subsection. The subsections or related lists, are defined usually by a thicker bar on the page. But you get to this certification section, and you'll see that under the column certification name, that should be your control number for your certification, and it will be highlighted as a link. And so you'll click on that link to take you to the next page, the certification detail, this subsection. And it's in this page, the certification detail, where if you scroll to the bottom, there is yet another subsection called the Cdfi Certification Annual Report. For those of you that have already completed this report for the 2016 report year, this is where you'll see there's already, there's still that record from 2016 there, and you will now be able to click on the new annual certification report button to create a report for 2017. If you look up under the section in the middle of the page under certification, Cdfi annual certification due dates, on the left-hand side, the bottom field is called report year, and that should read 2017. And that's what's going to allow you to create a new report, because your previous report was 2016. You're now allowed to create an additional report for 2017. And in fact, on the right-hand side, you'll see under those due dates, the initial report deadline is listed at 11/15, which if you got the email announcing that the form was available and what the due date was, you already know what that is the date these 2017 reports are due. So you click on that, you create that new report, and you are now in your 2017 report. The top of the page is going to look, just for those of you who've seen it before, largely the same. And in fact, the form overall, if I just take a step back, is largely the same as last year's form. We did make some tweaks. We added a few questions, which we're going to mention in a minute, that are mostly optional. There are a couple of questions that are required because they are actually not really new questions, but just components of an existing question. So for those of you that have done a report before, it's going to all look very familiar, and it's basically the same report. So this is what. So this is the first section, as I sort of in the agenda talked about some different sections. This first section has a couple of main components, if you will. Organizational questions, as well as questions about the certification criteria, the attestation questions, I often refer to them. If you scroll down the page from here, you'll see that it's ready for you to enter here. So this, when you first create that report, it automatically sort of puts you into edit mode, because you can see that the Save button is available for you to use, and you can start immediately entering data into these fields. Once you save it, it will bring you into the non-edit mode, where you'll be able to see all these questions and your responses that you've entered so far, as well as the additional sections toward the bottom. Excuse me, the bottom of the report, and we'll be getting to those soon enough. But as we look at the report here, you can see that there's some pretty simple questions. Actually, let me do the very first question that's in the sort of the upper left-hand corner here. Even though it looks like you're supposed to enter something, you don't need to enter anything there. It pre-populates. That to just this because it's pre-populating correctly. But you have tax status, pretty simple. Lines of business, just pull down menus, categories to describe your lines of business. There's a section for credit unions, asking about your credit union membership, total membership, portion of the membership that are in your target market. And those questions obviously are just for credit unions. That next section, and unfortunately we didn't update the screenshot here, but it's been retitled human resources and staffing, and we've actually added in this section a couple of additional questions. So you'll see that the staff time percentage questions are still there. The total staff time question is still there, but we've added the staff turnover and staff leadership change questions. Those are the first of the two, the new optional questions, so that when you are following along in the instructions, you'll see that the instructions highlight the fact that they are optional. You may or may not need to, you may want to answer those questions. And from there, there's another, I think, 8 questions that follow in several subsections, and these are all optional questions. Again, as the instructions will point out, and you'll see that they don't have the little red bars. All the red bars are indicating places where the field is required, and the form is not going to allow you to save unless you make entries into those fields. So once you get past those new optional questions, you're going to come to the criteria questions, the attestation questions. And as you can see here, we start with the legal entity, and the order of the criteria is as they typically show up when we list them. It's not significant, the order of the criteria, but each one of these sections is structured the same. Ask first this question, this attestation question. Are you still meeting the requirements of this criteria? And so what we're expecting is that you're going to refer to your initial certification, or any times that we've approved any changes to your certification, and your application materials, and we're expecting that you're going to review that and make sure that we're still we're still meeting the requirements that the Cdfi fund is set out for these criteria. A note on the wording of the questions in these sections, these criteria sections, it is a little bit odd. I know that sometimes you're reading it and you're like, I'm saying yes to this, when it seems logically maybe you should be saying no. But in this case, in the case for all these criteria questions, if you answer yes, that means yes, I'm still meeting the requirement of the certification requirement. The legal entity has an additional question about legal documentation changes. This is one where it's a little bit weird, because to say yes means yes, don't have any changes to my legal entity documentation. And if you look at the instructions are clear on this, because you can see that there is a circle with a little question mark, which means that there's help text there, which means that there is the full version of the question is in, if you hover over that question mark circle, will give you the full question. So if you answer no to any of these, that means there's some kind of change. And so it's those no answers and instances where there are change that we want then explained. So the explanation becomes, the field becomes a requirement if you're going to answer no to that question. So in the case of legal documentation change, no means no, legal documentation is not the same as it was when I first applied or was last reviewed. And then we want an explanation. You're then required to provide an explanation in the narrative box. Answer yes to these questions, the system will still allow you to enter text into these narrative boxes. And we allowed that because we find that there are some cases where Cdfis need to or want to explain how they've come to the conclusion that they are still meeting the particular criteria. Maybe there's something that they're pretty sure about, but they kind of want to just run it by us by just documenting. Yes, we're still meeting the legal entity criteria, and here's some information about why we think that, or why if anyone looked at us, they might question that we claim that we're attesting that we still meet it. Also say that you can enter information if you think it's necessary. There's something that you really want to explain, even though you are in fact attesting to still meeting the criteria. That's perfectly fine. But no answers, it becomes required. I will say one thing out, and we'll come back to this when we get to the attachment sections, but if in fact you have a change to your legal entity documentation and you enter a no in that question, not only do you have to give us a narrative explanation, but you're going to be required to provide the documents that have changed. So say you've made a change to your articles of incorporation or organization. We're going to just want a new copy of that. Under the old regime, where we did a whole new application, and every few years you were given the same old document whether it had changed or not. Now we're just getting it only if there's a change. So that pretty much goes for primary mission. Financial entity, just want to point out the fact that it is not required for the banks and credit unions. Only the loan funds and venture funds need to answer the financing entity questions. Goes back to the fact that banks and credit unions and bank holding companies get an automatic path. They're deemed automatically by their nature to meet the financing entity requirement. So you'll notice that these four questions do not have the red bar. just a function of how we had to do this with the form being for all different entity types. If you are a loan fund or a venture fund, just because there's not a red bar doesn't mean that it's not required for you. If you don't answer these questions and you go to save your responses on this page, you will get an error message saying that you've missed something, and there will be a message either at the top or next to the fields that require entry that didn't get entry. The development services section again is fairly straightforward. The instructions cover what you need to do. As we come down, the target market section again is fairly straightforward. Again, the language is a little bit odd, especially that second question over towards the right-hand side. Target market changes. If your target market has not changed, you're going to answer yes to say, yes, we have not had any changes to our target market. If you have had changes to your target market, or you're requesting change to your target market, you would answer no. No, my target market has not changed. You'll give a narrative explanation here as required. In the instructions document, we have a set of specific instructions for the other documents that you're going to need to provide, documents and maps, and how you need to provide and submit those is contained in the instructions. So it's not abundantly obvious just looking at this what you're going to need to do if you're going to request a target market change. But it does, the instructions go step by step through that process. And certainly if you have questions about that, we can take that in the Q&A, but just at a very high level, you're going to need to complete some additional documents and attach them in the attachment section below, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But also you're going to have to go into AMIS, go through AMIS to the old My Cdfi fund system and create a Cdfi certification signature page, just like you did when you were first applying for certification. But the only thing you need to do there, and the only reason you need to do that, is because that's how you submit the maps that correspond to the new target market that you're requesting. And so you'll create that signature page, and then in the mapping system where you created your maps, you'll be associating your maps to that signature page. Then you'll submit that signature page, and then that way we've got the map component of your request to change your target market. So we can talk about target market changes in the Q&A if people have specific questions. The only one other thing that I would say about target market changes is if you requested a target market change in your LAT, and this is just for those that have submitted the 2016 ACR, and unsure of the result of that request, because you don't seem to have received a determination on that request, that time to definitely get in touch with us. Submit a service request and let us know, hey, I'm not sure, was I supposed to get a determination? If so, what was it? And we'll sort out anything like that so that you have what you need to complete this current the 2017 ACR. Again, the accountability and the non-governmental entity sections here are again pretty carbon copy to the format of the rest of these criteria. That very last section there, other other information, other changes. This one deviates from the format about the answer being yes. So pay attention to the way the question is worded. So if you have not had any, there's nothing else that you need to tell us about. Like, this is kind of just a catch-all. Is there anything else that you think we need to know that doesn't fit anywhere else? You could put it here, but if you've got nothing like that, then you're going to say no to this question. No, we don't have any other information to provide to you. If you do have some other information, you would say yes, and then the yes answer would require the narrative, a response in the narrative field to the right, and you can see that if yes, put an explanation in this box, and that's different from the other narrative boxes, which all say if no, explain. So just to point that out, that one is just the format is just slightly different. So when you're finished with this page, you're going to save it, and unfortunately, you're not done yet. Unfortunately, so you're gonna save this, and that's gonna take you out of the edit mode. And you're in the edit mode because these are all the questions that are at this level of the form. There are some subsections that you still need to complete. So we're moving on to the next slide. You click Save to move on, to move out of edit mode and back to the main level page of the ACR. But you have some errors on this page. So here we have an example of there's a couple of errors. You can see that there's a couple of error messages at the top. There's an error message indicating there's some invalid data. And then there is an error message. It looks like we forgot to select a tax status, so it has yet another error message to right there next to the field to point out where the error is. So you would fix that by selecting a tax status, and you would click Save again. I will also point out there is this Save and New button there. You just want to ignore that, because back to what we said about you can only have one report for each report year. You're only going to be working on this one report. So you click Save again. You identified your errors and fixed whatever needed to be fixed, and this brings you back to the report detail level. So now, again, you can see all of your entries here, and scroll down, see the questions, and see what you've entered, and you can now also see the subsections that you're going to need to complete. So if we scroll down the page to the bottom of the page, you're going to see these four sections: the development services, the financial data, the financial products portfolio breakdown, and the related attachments. So we're going to go through each one of these here. This is, again, where's a related list. There's a sub-level subsection that we need to enter the information. Once we do that, it's going to provide you some summary information at this level. So when you're at this top level of your report, you're going to be able to see all of your data, but in order to enter and edit your data, you have to go to this sub-level. You have to create a record. You have to create that sub-level by clicking on New Development Services, or New Financial Data, or New Financial Products Portfolio Breakdown. Now, there's a slight difference between these. The Development Services and the Financial Product Portfolio Breakdown are designed for you to enter information by record. So you're going to have to, you may create one record for each of these sections, but you might also create several records to organize your responses and your information. I point that out because the financial data subsection here is a little bit different. you're only going to create one financial data subsection record, and it will actually not allow you to create more than one. So I'm just previewing the fact that don't expect to be able to create more than one, because we're asking you for information in these sections as of your last completed fiscal year. And for financial data, you only have one set of data for your last completed fiscal year, or we really want that data all in one record. We're dividing it up in the development services and the financial products sections. So just a little preview. We're going to go look at each one of these individually. So we go to the next slide. So when you go to create, you click on that button to create a development services sub-record, and it immediately puts you into the edit mode. And we can see that we're in edit mode. The save button is available to us, but we see that we can enter information into these fields, and we can see the red bar telling us which fields are required. And you're going to enter the information for your development services by the type of development services. So here in the slide, we have the example of business technical assistance. That's one option. But this is a pull-down menu, and you'll have several options to choose from. So, in this record, you're only going to give the information about business technical assistance development services. You're going to select a financial product that it's related to. Even if it's related to more than one, you're only allowed to pick one. So pick perhaps the most significant, the product that it's most significantly connected to. And then you're going to enter, total clients served, how many of the clients are in the target market, very straightforward. You're going to save this record. When you save it, it's going to bring you back to the non-edit mode. So here in edit mode, we're still at this lower level, this sub-level of the development services detail, and we can see now what we've entered, and know that we can double check what we've entered. Now we need to get back to the main level of our report form. And how do we do that? This the first row there, the first field, the Cdfi annual certification report, that's your report number, CCR, and then it's like, what is that? 6022. It's that's the number that associates with this particular development services record. You click on that number, you can see it's underlined. It is a link that brings you back up to your main report page, and you will now see that, oh, there's my record. It has the information that I inputted about, what is the development services service, what the financial product is associated with it, and the numbers. Now, if you have additional development services, for each development service, you're going to create a new record for each one of those. And so this subsection here at this level will show you, for each one that you create, repeat the process we just went through, you'll just have multiple rows in this subsection. Hopefully that's making sense. Always go back into these records if you need to edit them by clicking on the link under the column. There's development services ID, and that's the number for that particular development service record. But and so now we click on the financial data, new financial data record, and the first thing you're going to actually see here is a screen that's going to ask you to select a financial data record type. So the way we've set this up is that the questions in this section are slightly different depending on what type of organization you are. So we've got 4 sets of questions that are really like 98% the same, but there's just enough differences that we needed to have slightly different sets for these groups. And so the banks and the bank holding companies is one set, credit unions is one set, the for-profit venture funds is another group, and the nonprofit loan and venture funds is a 4th group. So you're going to select which one makes sense for your organization, which matches your organization. You click Continue, and then that takes you into the record, right into edit mode, just like with the development services. And you'll see that all of the questions in this section are required. They're all have the red bar, but you just go down the list and you answer all the questions as appropriately. You can enter zeros in here if 0 is an appropriate answer. You are going to find that there's a few places in here under the assets and the liabilities where we have soft warnings. So we're expecting that your total assets are going to match the sum of your total liabilities and your total worth or net equity or net assets, total net assets or total equity, the sort of fundamental accounting equation. But we recognize there could be very exceptional cases where maybe that's not actually true. So we're not going to force you to enter it that way, but it's more of a reminder because the overwhelming majority of folks that's going to be true, and we just want to make sure that we have some sort of way to a reminder to make sure that the data is as correct as possible. There's a couple other instances where that's the case. There are little flags that will be green or orange. It won't prevent you from saving the record if you have one of those flags. At the very bottom, and I think we scroll down here, the rest of the questions are listed here. You'll see the very last question, total value of non-performing assets. That's a question that was on the 2016 report. We have actually added 2 questions below this, and our expectation is that really this question here, total value of non-performing assets, is actually the sum of these 2 other questions. And so we're not really asking you a new question. We're just asking you for components of the answer to this question. But you're going to answer all 3. And again, this is one of the places where there's a little flag that says, well, these 2 fields should match, should equal the sum, or this field should equal the sum of these 2 following fields. Again, it won't force you to do that, but we think in an overwhelming majority of cases, it should be the case. So once you've answered all of these questions, you're going to click Save, and that is again going to take you to the edit mode, and you can review your entries and make sure that they're right. If you had any errors, it would not allow you to save and give you error messages and let you correct those and save again. But once once it allows you to save, then you can then you're finished. Again, just like with development services, up at the top here, the Cdfi annual certification report ID number is the link back to the higher level of the report. So you click on that link, that brings you back up to your main page, and I really should have updated this slide. My apologies, because it's a little misleading, because you will see in this slide that there are 2 financial data records. That is purely because this is this was taken out of a screenshot of a version that was not quite final and allowed those 2 records. In your case, you will not be able to have 2 records in your financial data section here. Just want to highlight that and make that clear. The final really subsection here is this financial products portfolio breakdown. Again, you can click on the button there to create a new record. It takes you again right into edit mode of that record. You'll enter the product, the type of product, subtype if applicable, and then you're going to enter the information about that type of product. The total number of transactions, and then the total volume, the dollar amount related to that number of transactions. As for your entire portfolio, as of the last day of your most recently completed fiscal year, and then you'll provide the portion of that portfolio that was to the target market, both in terms of the dollars and the number of transactions and the dollars, and then you will save that, and it will bring to the non-edit mode. You can check all your answers, and then you'll click on that underlined link right there at the top on the Cdfi Annual Certification Report, which will bring you back to the level we're not seeing at the moment. I think, yeah, it's out of order here. Bring you up to this level, and you can see that your record is there. This, just like with the development services, you can have multiple records here, so that you could have different types of products, loans, equity investments. Within that, you could have loans for residential mortgages. You could have loans for business loans. It allows you then to segregate those different types and give us that information by those categories. The interesting thing about this section is that once you've done that, the system is going to create some summary sections here. We create this target market count summary and target market amount summary. So it's going to be summarizing the numbers of transactions and the dollar amount of those transactions. And so this is, again, is doing a little calculation, summing those records, because you may have multiple records, into these summaries. And then if you look on the right-hand side at the bottom of each one of these summary sections, there's a percentage, and that's going to tell you the percentage of that of the number of transactions to the target market, and then the dollar amount of transactions to the target market. And that's going to combine all those different types. So it's going to combine your loans, different kinds of loans, with your equity investments, your loan guarantees, your etc., whatever these products are, and so that gives us all a sense of this service to the target market. We do want to highlight that this is not the same as the earlier target market section, where we ask you, are you still meeting the target market requirement? Are you still providing products, at least 60% of products to your target market? In that earlier question, and as the instructions instruct you, you're looking back at your last completed fiscal year. As opposed to here, we're getting information about your entire portfolio as of a particular date. So there are apples and oranges, two different things. You might find that we are in fact providing more than 60% of our products to our target market in our last completed fiscal year, but the portfolio percentages, you might find, they're below 60%. Or one is below 60%, or both of them are below 60%. There could be any number of reasons why that is the case. it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem with your service to the target market. Because if you are serving, every year, more than 60% of your financial products are going to your target market, it could be that your portfolio looks like it's, over 60% to the target market. But what if, the transactions that are going to your target market are exiting your portfolio at a faster rate than non-target market transactions? Well, that might, that bring your portfolio below 60%, and that's not a problem because we understand that could very well be the case. There could be other reasons why the percentages are lower. So I point that out just so that, if you're looking at it and wondering, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? That's the case. If you think that there's something that we should know about that, you're more welcome to provide an explanation in that target market section. Even if you've attested, 60% of our transactions in the last fiscal year are going to our target market. We're still meeting the target market criteria requirement, but we want to tell you this about what's going on with our portfolio. Perfectly fine to do that. The other thing, while I'm talking about that I want to also mention is that when you are testing that your target market, you're meeting the target market requirement that 60%, at least 60% of your transactions are going to your target market. That is based on your established target market, certified target market, if you will, approved target market, from your last, application or approved modification. Whatever your current approved target market is, that's what you're basing that on. Even if you are asking for a change to your target market, in the next question in that section, you would say, yes, we're meeting the requirement. No, we have a change to our target market. This is, and then complete the requirements for requesting the modification to your target market. But that way, we know that your requirements right now. You want to change, you're fine right now. If, in fact, you're not meeting the target market requirement with your existing target market, then you answer no to the attestation question, and then you probably should be requesting a change to your target market that's going to get you back in line. So then you would also answer no to the target market change question and give us all the information we need for your requested target market. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'm happy to take questions about that, but that's what I wanted to cover there. And if we come back again, this was your subsections here are going to start to look like as you enter those words. The last thing is that attachment section at the bottom, and like I said earlier in the legal entity section, if you have a change to your legal entity documentation, you're required to attach the revised copy or the changed copy. So there's a category, there's a pull down here. If you're attaching files, we have one specially titled for legal entity documentation. Everything else is other, and that may be fleshed out in future iterations. But this is where you're going to attach, if you're asking for a change to your target market, this is where you're going to attach those documents that you're going to need to provide to support the request for a target market change. But otherwise, this section works just like any other place you're on a website uploading documents. Really shouldn't be familiar probably to anyone. So back at the main application page, and you're all done. You've saved your report. You've entered everything into those subsections that you need to report, and so there's a button, Submit the Annual Certification Report, ready for you. It's at the top and the bottom of the report, and you click on that. when you're ready, and it should then give you a couple of messages. One is, thank you, we've received your report, and the other is, if you once you submit your report, you can't change it. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to fix this yet, but these messages come in the wrong order. If there was some problem with your report, you could, after you submitted it, you knew it was there, you could contact us through a service request. Say, hey, I know there's a problem with my annual report. Can you send it back to me? We would be happy to send it back to you to correct errors you already know are in there. That's not a problem for us to do. But just so you know that those messages are coming in the wrong order. Then you're basically done. You will see in your account that you've submitted the report. You can see there, this is that certification detail page that you'll come to when after you've submitted the report. And right down there at the bottom, you can see there's a column that has status, and you'll see that it says submitted, and you'll see the date that you submitted it. And so that's your assurance that it did submitted correctly and that we have it. Not anything complicated there. With that, finally, with the question and answer. I know I took maybe a little bit of time than I would have liked, but it's better to have all the information, I think, especially for the new folks that haven't seen this yet, haven't used it yet. I commend any of you that have already done the report once or hanging in there. But if we could engage the Q&A portion, we would love to take any questions that folks have.
Sure, the phone lines are now open for questions. If you'd like to ask a question over the phone, please press *1 and record your name. If you'd like to withdraw your question, press *2. Thank you.
There's a awkward pause as people get queued up for questions. With luck, I've already answered all of your questions, and we have any questions, or we'll have a few questions, but that seems unlikely. So we're, of course, more than happy to take questions.
There are questions in the queue. The first one is from Barb. Your line is now open.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I just had a question which you did kind of address. We're still waiting to hear about our application to expand our target market. So part 1 is, when might we hear about that? And part 2, then, we also want to request a further expansion this year, and how to do that.
Additional requests would be just the same way that you did it last time, just following instructions in the instruction document. But if I could ask you, if you haven't already, to submit a service request and to make it very specific, hey, we are wanting a status update on a target market modification request from our last ACR. Hopefully it's just a matter of, we need to get you the determination on that. If there are any issues, we would just immediately get in touch with you and sort it out so that you have a determination before you have to submit the current ACR.
Okay, I'll submit that service request today then.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next question in the queue is from Kellen. Your line is now open. Kellen, if you're there, your line might be muted.
It was muted. I'm sorry. It seems like many of the questions I have to pull resources and answers from different people within our organization. But in order to access those, what's required, I have to click through different levels, and so I have to complete one level before I can get to the next set of questions. Do you have a PDF or hard copy available of all the information that's required with the different definitions so that I can provide something so that I can start working on this now with my entire organization instead of in a piecemeal fashion? So,
go ahead.
So I know what development services requirements were.
Okay, so the instructions document literally goes through tip to tail, question to question. So questions are there, and they are grouped by those sections. Somebody to be working on the financial data questions while you're still doing the criteria and the organizational questions. You can, give them that part of the instructions, and it, all the questions are right there.
Or the instructions, is that different?
The instruction manual. So it's on the certification reporting page on the Cdfi Fund website. The AMIS annual report instruction document. That will obviously not make specific questions in the application. In the report. One thing I will say is that you can. I get that it's a little annoying that you have to complete the first section and save it before you can even access the three subsections, the development service, financial data, and the financial products. But what you can do is you can just go in and put placeholder answers in there. Just go and click yes. Get answers into all the required questions, save it, then that you access to those other, the later subsections. But you can always go back to the first set and edit those as much as you want until you submit the entire report. Does that make sense?
It does. I did miss where you said we could get the instructions document, but I'm sure you'll make that available in email or it was in this in the webinar, so you don't have to repeat that over the phone as long as it's available and easy to locate.
Yeah, well, it's definitely available on the certification pages of the Cdfi Fund website.
Thank you.
You'll be able to find it. As for development services, development services, I would say if you just more information about that, if this is you weren't involved in the initial certification application, to find your original certification application, you can also look to the application materials that we have posted on the Cdfi Fund website. They're basically sort of three. There's kind of a home page for Cdfi certification, and then two subsections. One dealing with applying for certification, and one with reporting. So under the applying subsection are all the documents and application documents and guidance documents that one would need, and there's more information there about what our development service is, and that might be helpful to review as well as your own application. Our application. I mean, in a nutshell, development services are those things that services that you offer that help your borrowers, potential borrowers, investees access your financial products. So if you're offering small business loans, micro business loans, it may be that you're offering some financial management training, business plan training, financial counseling for small business owners, these types of things that are helping strengthen a borrower, investee, so that they can meet the underwriting to to apply for one of your products.
Thank you.
Next question in the queue is from Jamie. Your line is now open.
Can you repeat what documents exactly need to be attached to the ACR for those requesting a target market modification?
So it'd be the relevant portions out of the application, narrative application document from the basic certification application, as well as the relevant sections out of the Excel workbook, attachment A, application document from the original, the basic certification application, and anything else that comes out of that is that would be required. If there were, and off the top of my head, I'm blanking on a scenario that would require more than that, as well as the maps would need to be attached to a signature page or associated with a signature page that new maps that cover the proposed target market, modified target market.
And the signature page actually go through the old, I name of it, but the old system. Yeah. They don't have
the My Fund system. And so this is where the process for that is in those AMIS navigation documents, but at a very high level. From your AMIS account, there's a function called the app launcher, and it's through the app launcher that you have access to the old My Cdfi Fund system.
Yep.
And it's bulky, it's annoying, and we are planning our our upgrades to the system to get rid of that. We haven't fully implemented Cdfi certification in AMIS yet. Most all of our certification systems are actually in queue for development in AMIS. So that is TD at this point still. Great question. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Next quick cue is from Kevin. Your line is now open.
Actually, I have two questions that are, I'm hoping, pretty straightforward. First, if we changed our bylaws to separate the role of our CEO into CEO and president, is that, so it's two people, is that considered a change that requires a Cdfi certification amendment form? And if so, where do we get that form?
So we have not really distinguished between different types of changes to folks' legal documentation. We've just said, if there's a change, if you've revised your legal documents, just as a new copy. But you can explain, appreciate very much when people explain what those changes are so that we can quickly find them in the document and confirm whether it's relevant or not. That does not sound like a particularly relevant change, but we would still just ask that in the ACR that you indicate, yep, our legal documents had a change, and then brief description. We changed our bylaws to do this, and then attach a copy of the bylaws in the attachment section.
Chris, this is Laura Bucksbaum. I'm sitting here with Kevin. The actual question asks for a Cdfi certification amendment form if we answer.
Oh, no. Gotcha. Great.
And we couldn't find that. What is that? Is there a form that's required, or would we just attach the new bylaws in our document?
There's a form.
Do we need to do it? It's not a material events form.
Nope. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you what it is. That's unfortunate. We need to fix that because that's confusing. It is a leftover of how the certification report was initially developed on paper before it was implemented in AMIS. developed as here's a report and then here's an amendment form for if you have changes. We really combine those two things in the online report form as it's presented now.
So we describe it in the narrative and attach new bylaws.
Yep, exactly.
In our regular docs, or is this an attachment to the certification report?
To the ACR report. So at the bottom of your report, there's a subsection for attachments, and just super simple, just a simple document upload system.
Okay. So, and we had a second question. You want to go ahead, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. So we changed the language of our mission, but the overall, kind of strategic direction of the organization is still the same. Is that a material event that requires the approval documentation and the material events form?
So just for everyone's benefit, the material event form, especially now that we have the annual reporting regime, really is connected to the certification by itself. Where we find references to the material event form now are in funding assistance or allocation agreements. It is those when you participate in a funding program, one of our support programs, where you enter an agreement with us. Those agreements all say if you have a material event such as one of these or anything else that's significant, you need to tell us about it and fill out this material event form. That's really separate from annual certification form, even though it might be a certification issue, because those agreements say you have to maintain your certification. So
Chris,
all you need to do is describe that in your the primary mission criteria section in the first section that we covered, and just indicate we're still meeting the primary mission requirement, but we have had a change to our primary mission. Here's what we did, and here's attached a copy of the document that evidences that.
There is a specific question that Kevin was referencing that asks if we have changed our mission, and does and say that requires a material events form, right, Kevin? I mean,
so if we say no on that question, the question about is your mission changed or whatever, or has your mission not changed? Then if you were to mark no, instruction document said that we needed to attach a documentation with the governing body's approval and a material events form and that kind of stuff. So I guess it's a two-parter. The first part is change something that would require or trigger us to answer no, and if so, would it require that, or is this not material enough to? And then we just mark yes, but note it in the box and follow the body's approval documentation and the material events form.
Did you change your mission statement?
Yes, we changed our mission statement. We went through a strategic planning process and changed the mission statement. The overall direction of the organization, our 5 qualifying activities have not changed. So it was a language change. And we'll figure out what to, how to let know about that in the most appropriate way.
Right. So what we're really looking for is the opportunity to review the change and affirm that nothing has really changed in practice, because we require that certified Cdfi have an official mission documented by and approved by the governing body. So if the approved mission statement is changed, we definitely want that. So the question about has your primary mission statement changed? The answer would be yes. or rather in this case, no, the language is weird, and then an explanation and a copy of the new document that evidences the official change. And when we're reviewing the report, we'll take a look at that and see, oh yeah, this is significant. It's not. They're still meeting the requirement or not. But I'm not actually seeing in the instruction document that we're actually telling you to do the material event form. Not sure what you're looking at, but purposes with the ACR, we wouldn't need a material event form. We just want to handle within the ACR the annual report itself.
Okay. But you'd want some board minutes or a document that says approved by the board such and such a date or something like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, thanks, Chris. That's helpful.
Perfect.
Next in the queue is from Ben. Your line is now open.
Yeah.
Hi, Ben.
Oh, Ben, yeah. Did he say Ben? But yeah,
Ben.
Ben.
All right, so I've got a quick question about the TM attestation. And so, a couple quick clarifications. One, you can check yes to the TM attestation, but still check no TM change if you'd like to request a modification of your target market in the absence of a material event, correct?
What that would mean is that based on your existing target market, you're meeting the target market requirements. At least 60% of your activities are still going to the target market.
Yes. Okay. That's my first question, and I thought that was the answer, and I think you even put that in the main body of our webinar here. The other question is, and I think you covered this as well. I just wanted to clarify and ensure I understood correctly. Assuming that you meet the overall 60% requirement, but you have some aspect of it that's, most concerning aspect. Maybe one of the thresholds when you look at all 5 or 6 of your thresholds for all of your loans and your deposits, et cetera, is just under 60. Everything else is well over 60. Normally, in a certification application, we would explain the circumstances, and still assert that we meet the 60% requirement. So in that scenario, it's acceptable to check yes to the attestation, but then still include a narrative just to explain to you all concern or anything we'd want you to be aware of that you should not, even though we still meet the overall 60% requirement. Is that fair to say?
We've seen that in a number of cases, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, where then the classic is that say a bank, because most you see this with banks and credit unions, the number of loans is well over 60%, but the dollar amount is a little under 60%, and we have long allowed exceptional cases when there's a reasonable explanation why that is the case. There's something about their model, something about their products, their markets that lead them to that scenario. And we have the discretion to be able to accept things like that when we feel it's a real case has been made. So that would be a great explanation, especially when that was the basis of the initial certification. So even remind us that this was this was the basis of your initial certification. We're still meeting it. The number is over 60%. The dollar amount is a little bit under, and this is what this situation looks like and continues to look like.
Those are my only questions.
Next queue is from Kyle. Your line is now open.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, thanks so much. Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Thanks for walking through this today. My question is actually just, our legal entity hasn't changed, but we've taken on an assumed business name. Do we need to do anything different?
So in general, we like you to keep your official, your legal business name as, you know, what's on our account. How will you record it in our system? You know, that just makes it clear to us, you know, whenever we're looking at your documentation, that, you know, we can clearly see that it matches. You know, you could put that in the explanation that you're using a DBA. It's not likely to affect anything, but I suppose couldn't hurt to just record it.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Great. Love those questions. Hey, Ted, could you tell me how many people are in the queue? I realize that I have already run over, and I want to make sure that I get to as many questions as I can.
There are about 8 left in the queue.
Great. That's not too bad.
The next in the queue is from Candace. Your line is now open.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Michelle. So my questions are mainly to gain clarity on the reporting dates. So I'll be, for the new financial data, I'll be using values from my audited financials, which was 2016. We report calendar year. But then I go to the target market questions, like, should I be using that same, or the portfolio? Right. Or should I be using the same year, 2016, even though it's reporting period for 2017?
Right. So, great question. I was hoping somebody would ask that so we could just go over it again to make sure that it's clear. We call this report year 2017, and we've called it that because you're submitting this report in 2017. But in instructions, we ask you to use your last information on your last completed fiscal year. Okay. So in the target market attestation question, in that first section where we say, are you still meeting the target market requirements? Are you still directing at least 60% of your activities to your target market? For that analysis, you're going to use your financing activity, your lending activity that took place during your last completed fiscal year, that 12-month period. So if right now, your last completed fiscal year, was 12/31/16, you're using the information for that, for that 12-month period ending 12/31/16. Later, when you get to the financial products portfolio breakdown, we're asking, so tell us about your transactions in your entire portfolio as of the last day of your last completed fiscal year. So you'd be looking at your portfolio now point in time as of 12/31/16.
Everything, like a cumulative report for everything.
Yeah, whatever's on your books at that point in time. People, their portfolio is going to be bigger than what they did just in 1 year. Not always the case, so it's confusing because in some places we're asking for this point in time analysis, and in others we want for a specific period, bound by 2 dates, and we know that gets a little confusing. Help?
Yeah, that does help. I do have one more question regarding the attachment A, the spreadsheet. So the financing entity desk about liquid assets available for financing in the next 3 months. Like, what would be the cutoff date? 9/30, 8/31?
So, can you, for purpose, are you filling out the attachment A workbook?
Well, instructions that I received said I should be filling this out along with a Word document.
Are you applying for a new certification for the first time?
No.
You're certified?
Yes.
The only place that I think we reference the workbook is if you're asking for a change to your already approved target market, and if that's what you're like, you want to request a modification to your target market, you only need to fill out the relevant portions of that workbook to do that. And then the instructions talk about it's going to be the target market tables, the sheets that have the target market tables on them, the board and accountability worksheets within that workbook. You shouldn't need to, I don't think, out the financing entity work in that workbook if all you're doing is asking a modification for your target market.
Oh, the only thing I should be doing is following that Word doc. Okay.
Instructions, it should step you through which documents and which parts of each document you need to do for the target market change request.
Any changes, and I guess maybe I wasn't clear with the instructions, so I'll go back through that.
You look at those target market section instruction, and you might be pleasantly surprised to see that you don't have to fill out attachment A if you're not requesting a change to your target market.
Okay.
But if you're still confused, please send a service request, and we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Okay. Thank you.
That goes for everybody. If you get a question answered today, and then tomorrow you're like, yeah, now I'm confused again. I looked at something else. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us especially through a service request, to get further clarification. In fact, while we're doing these questions, I'm just going to move the slide deck forward. I meant to do this before. Just the different options you have for getting in touch with us. We have those help desk, CCME help desk channels, but we do hope that folks will, again, embrace the service request and use that as much as possible. But great questions. Thanks, Candace.
The next question, Karen, your line is now open.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my call. I have a couple of just quick, I think I know the answers to these two questions, but I just wanted to make sure. And you may have answered my first one on this very last conversation you were having, but I wasn't following with attachment A. So I just wanted to confirm, if we're not changing our target market, we don't need to submit a map, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. That's one. And then two is with the due date thing. So I think originally I had on my radar that this report was going to be due, I think, the end of September or something like that. And so we were sort of getting a little nervous because I wasn't seeing any notices or anything like that had changed, but I couldn't seem to, I don't think I was able to access the report. So my question about that is the date now going to, from here on out, going to be more in November? And if not, if it's going to be sort of shifting, will we get kind of more advance notice, before sort of what the due date, if there's an originally set due date, like if we could get notification before that, that would be cool. But is the thinking now that rather in September they're more to be due later in the year, like this is?
So on the first point, the due date is November 15th.
Right.
So it was established as October 31st in the spring. We thought, we're ready for a due date of October 31st, no problem. Well, yeah, that was perhaps a little bit arrogant on our part to assume that. We ran into a few issues that pushed us back. So just to clear for everyone, November 15th, 2017 for the 2017 ACR. As for next year and future years, we certainly hope that we are going to establish a due date well in advance, and that it will be the due date every year, going forward, so people can just know what to expect and don't even need extra notice. I really apologize to everybody for the somewhat short notice, revising that due date and simply the short, exactly the short notice, but not being able to make the report form available any earlier than we did. We just ran into some issues that we could not make it available any earlier. So definitely look for advance notice in the future and for a more set due date. That's definitely our intent.
I can just add, this would probably be a good opportunity to have everybody make sure that their contacts are up to date in the AMIS account. Because when we do make changes or send notifications, they are done with your contacts that are identified in your AMIS account. As long as those are up to date, and maybe even if you subscribe to the certification webpage on the Cdfi Funds webpage, you'll be able to receive the notifications that are as they occur to the website. So just be sure to keep an eye out for any communications that we have in those two ways.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody the other day, as backups, like we definitely try and send you the information directly, but as backups to sign up the automatic notification when we post stuff to the website, which is available right on the website homepage, Cdfi website, as well as just making a practice, monthly, quarterly, just to visit the Cdfi Fund website, the certification pages, just in case for some reason, wacky reason, you haven't gotten some piece of information that, we always try and post things on the website as that sort of backup. Thanks.
Thank you.
Question in the queue is from Vicki. Your line is now open.
Hey, Chris, it's Vicki.
Hi, how are you?
I've now sent so many emails to people because I wasn't sure I was working properly with the question situation. So I just wanted to say kind of a bunch of things in quick order. To the gentleman who said we need to see the PDF version blank, I second that. If you want me to pay for it, send me the bill. I'm happy to pay for it as a taxpayer. The question I have really pertains to target market maps. We have several old signature pages, and I wrote about this last year, who had made a comment in the webinar that you gave last year that said, because we'd asked for an expansion of our target market. We've been in these discussions for several years now, and that the whole review of the certification framework has essentially paused your response to us. Can I assume that pause continues and do not need to submit any additional requests for expansion of our target market? And I couldn't go in and delete because they're associated, they're tied like glue to old signature pages. So I've got 3 or 4 signature pages with maps, many of which do not pertain to us, but there's no good way to delete them. So what do I do about that? Because we still I will continue to report based on our target markets as they exist, but we're still asking for that expansion. Should I just assume we're still on pause and I can leave all those old icky maps out there?
Yeah, and for anybody that has, if they feel they have an outstanding target modification request, to just document that. Just to be like, we have this request already in. We don't want people to duplicate the work of submitting things that they've already submitted. So that's just a note on that in that target market section. As for submitted, we have no way to delete old signature pages, breaks, maps apart from signature pages. One thing that I would say is that if a map is already submitted with a signature page, and maps that you want to use in a request to modify a target market, you can go ahead and actually reference that map, because the key is that we have you submit the maps so that when they get submitted, they do get locked and you can't change them. Then that becomes a piece of information that we can rely on. We don't necessarily need you to submit it again. I believe that if you did want to tweak a map that's already submitted, that you can still do a save as and then edit a new copy of the map. So it would be essentially a separate map, but you wouldn't have to start from scratch. If it was a map with a lot of details in it, and you just wanted to modify that map. So I'm pretty sure that the system will allow you to do a save as in the mapping program to start from that point. But
yeah, it doesn't pertain to us, but I can tell you which of the many signature pages has the correct map, so I will just reference that in the narrative. If that. Can I quick two more questions? One of which is the question about the financing entity question before. I literally felt that out of fear of an IG walking into our offices, the way I approach this whole exercise is I redo the old certification application for the most part. So I actually do look out 3 months, and, in terms of do we have adequate liquidity. I don't know exactly how else you can attest that you are a financing entity, that nothing's changed. But should the Inspector General walk into your offices, I would assume they'd be looking for supporting documentation. Am I mistaken?
Has she provided you any guidance on what you have to have on hand, in your office? I definitely recommend that, anytime that folks are doing, when they do their, application, when they do a target market change, they do these ACRs, that, you keep, all of your analysis and documentation that supports, these submissions, just in case, for whatever reason, somebody, us, or anyone else needs to see it, that it's clear, you can, clearly walk through, this is how we got to this result that we reported. So
that's why
great. Sounds like a great approach.
When we fill out, somebody just filled out the target market section. We've already asked you, and we're waiting for our response, as I said, on the TM issue, but we will, what I've had her do is do it based on what we've got today, and I do that for everything. And we have had a slight, I think maybe a very minimal change, like we've changed an adverb, I think, in our mission statement. Does that require, from, innovative to empowering something? Does that kind of a very, very small change require disclosure?
Did the board approve a new mission statement?
I don't believe. Well, they might change. It might have just been a wording change, but it didn't really change the mission or, what we're doing. More of a branding exercise.
Right. The official mission statement has changed, and the board has approved a new mission statement. Then just attach that.
Okay.
And for ones that are super, slight, they're just statistically different. That's not likely to have an effect. We're just trying to, it's hard, it's impossible to really give people guidance. Well, submit this, don't submit that. We're just we look at mission statements, approved mission statements, and we'll do that for everybody.
2 other suggestions. Will the recording be posted? And sometimes a service request is better handled by a phone call than an email. And I've had some brilliant emails from you that I could, along the lines of the Gutenberg Bible. They're that long. But sometimes it's really helpful to talk to people.
If you want to talk to someone, do a service request saying, here's my question. I'd really like to talk to someone about this question. And then we can call you, call you back.
When will the recording be posted?
Expect a week or so, or?
I'm not sure. I think we also have to make sure the formatting is right, and whatever we need to do with civil rights and getting things posted for accessibility. So to the website, I would have to say on that one. We'll try to get it out as quickly as possible.
Right.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be able to post recording. I know we did have trouble.
We had trouble
with that last time.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that that's been solved. But yeah, the best thing would be just to check back at the website periodically to see.
Will the slides be available?
I think we should be able to. I think you can actually pull the slides right now.
Yeah.
From the site.
From
Presentation.
this session. I think your interface should.
Now our operator can.
Say that. I see. Well, I'll look at that and see if that's doable. Yeah, I don't know who to get in touch with. Whether that's another thing is trying to figure out who to talk to. Is it CCME? Is it AMIS? We need a traffic cop here.
Account when you put in a service request, it allows us to pass it back and forth between the units that need to take a look at the request. So. Okay. You send it to one place and it doesn't need to go there, they will send it to us and vice versa.
Okay. Thank you. It's not clear how to save these documents, but I'll look around a little bit more, and if send out an email, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
From Isabel, your line is now open.
Hi. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's been really helpful. I've been able to find all of the documents and kind of review everything on my own beforehand, so that was really helpful as well. I had two specific questions related to percent financial staff time as well as the percent DS staff time, which is for unregulated only. The instructions, it doesn't say that it's optional, but in the actual, when you populate the new annual report, it's up and they're not red. So I was just wondering, are those actually required? Because I want to make sure that I get that information beforehand so I'm able to move through and add the additional information that's needed.
Question. Thanks for bringing that up. It's the same issue with the other questions in the financing entity criteria attestation section, where there are no red bars because it doesn't apply just to banks and credit unions. But the system, the system couldn't accommodate for us requiring for some kinds of entities versus another using those little red bars. That those 2% staffing questions, are in the same situation as the financing entity questions, where they're required for the loans and the VC funds, but the banks and credit unions. So we could put red bars there. If you're a loan fund and you don't fill those out, you're going to get an error message and it won't allow you to save that page.
Thank you for helpful. Yes, it does.
It's those percentages were used in the they were part of the financing entity criteria, and the total staff time was a separate question. They seem like they're the same thing, but just the history of how we came up with those questions was different. The source of those questions was different, so that's why it's a little bit funky. But great question, because that's
very helpful. Thanks so much.
You bet.
The next question in the queue is from Abby. Your line is now open.
Abby.
Hello there. A question about the data and what fiscal we were reporting, but it was answered earlier in the Candace call. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks.
Next question is from Annie. Your line is now open.
And thank you for the helpful questions. It's answered a lot of mine that I've had so far. I just have one left. In terms of submitting the report, there's several people listed as administrators on my institution's AMIS account. So is it specific to one person, or can anybody submit the report?
Anybody can submit the report. Perfect. That's nice and good to get an e-question in there.
The clue is from Rosalind. Your line is now open.
I have a question regarding interest income and earned income. The first question is interest income exclusive to bank accounts only, or is it bank accounts only and loan interest? And the second one, for earned income, are you asking about application fees, commitment fees, and filing fees?
Great question. This is unfortunately going to fall into the category of questions that I do have better explanation for than what we have in the instructions and the glossary. So if you've already looked in both of those documents, that's really the best we have. And so what I've asked people to do, the approach that I think is best, is to make decisions that make sense, that you feel reasonable, and document that, and have that, in your record of how you prepared, and the supporting analysis of your report in case. And we need to go back to that. You need to go back to that. Anybody else needs to go back to that. But at this point, we don't have more detailed guidance on how those terms are defined.
Okay, wonderful. So we will define what an interest income is, and we'll have the backup and support where it was generated from.
Within the definitions that we've already given you.
Same for income.
The instructions, talk about what they would be, and then the glossary also has definitions which really, hopefully, are the same. But the glossary could have some more detail. I haven't compared them lately.
Excellent. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you bet. Great question.
And I'm showing no further questions in the queue.
Well, I hope that means that we've answered everybody's questions and everybody has crystal clear understanding of the annual certification report and knows exactly what they need to do and is not going to have any problems. That being said, we know folks are going to have more questions later on and need more assistance. Therefore, we have put the contact information up on the screen, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look at that, to jot it down. This is all on our contacts page on the website as well, so if you didn't get it, it's there, and I believe you should be able to download the slide deck right now while we're on the line. Haven't already tried to do that. I know the slides aren't that helpful. We've talked about a lot of the detail. I would really just encourage people to, walk through that information that's in the instructions document. Reference the glossary as necessary. If you need to go back to the basic certification application information to sort of refresh on what the criteria are about and how you fit the criteria in your initial application. And when you have questions, send them to us. We really want to help you make this as painless as possible. It's probably less painful than it absolutely has to be. again, I think as we all do this year after year, it's going to hopefully become easier and more rote and not such a big deal. But thank everybody that had questions, a lot of great questions. I hope other people found them helpful. Thank you all for being with me through this presentation. Ted as well, thanks for being our operator today. And unless anybody snuck into the queue while we were just chatting there, Ted, still 0?
Sir.
All right, I think we can close it. Just a teeny bit over the hour. So again, thanks everybody. Good luck. And we'll see you next time.
This concludes today's call. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.